Hello, I'd like to thank everyone who's brought this DVD and welcome you to this DVD on the English opening. An opening with a long history and becoming very popular again at top level, and basically a very fascinating opening that can be played at every level of chess. It's a sound opening, so I know I've done an opening DVDs on the King's Gambit, which a lot of people will say is rather unsound nowadays. I kind of disagree with that, so I think the King's Gambit is still very playable. But the English is a very, very sound and safe opening, yet with exciting and interesting prospects. It's an opening you can play and you don't need to know too much theory behind it, which is another positive thing. A lot of other openings nowadays, you need to know lots and lots of theory behind what you're playing. But with the English opening, you can basically, as long as you know the ideas and the setups, they basically transcend and work in a lot of different positions. So I think the ideas behind the English opening and the setups you're going for are very important. And it's one of these openings where theory doesn't really change too drastically. So if you learn the English now and you learnt everything inside this DVD, it should still be relevant to you in 10 years time, hopefully 20 years time, because it's a very sound opening built on very sound principles, and an opening which is not going to, like I say, develop so much, not like maybe the Najdorf Sicilian or any Sicilian opening. Maybe even the Berlin defence is going to develop at a much faster rate than the English. Before this DVD, I was commentating somewhere else, and I was chatting to Nakamura, Hikaru Nakamura, during this commentary, and the reason I was chatting to him was that it was in the Norway chess competition in Stavanger, very strong competition, where you had most of the best players in the world playing. And on the round I was commentating on, out of the 5 games, there was 5 English openings. And now the interesting thing, as well as the English being very popular at club level, at top level, most top players seem to be taking up it again with the white pieces. Why? Well, Nakamura said that what I basically agreed with me totally in the chat, and the reason people at top level are playing the English is because it's maybe one of the most exciting openings around at the moment. You might think, well, the English opening, exciting, really? Well, yes, I think it is, because it offers white players who play with the white pieces, chances to gain an advantage and to play unique positions from a very early stage. If you play e4, you have to now face the Berlin opening, and this is an opening where white cannot prove a theoretical advantage. So you could be struggling from a very early stage of white to get any kind of interesting position with one e4. If you play d4, now there are a number of ways that black has found to equalise. But if you play c4, a lot of the positions are more unique, they are more rich, and they're really down to the individual, the player, to try to gain an advantage. Rather than gain anything theoretical, it's just an open position, an open book. And all you have to do is just play chess, and you should be able to get some kind of unique and rich position. And this is why most of the top players are playing it in this round. All 5 games was an English opening. And the reason they're playing it is just to get a position with white where they can play and get an interesting position with lots of possibilities where they don't have to agree a draw too soon. Maybe unlike the Berlin, they have to take a draw because there's no way to gain an edge. The English opening offers you interesting possibilities and prospects to play unique positions and aim for a win in a non-theoretical way, or not such a theoretical way. So this is why I think it's a fascinating opening. And this part 1 of the DVD, we're going to be concentrating on the moves c4, then e-pawn moves from black. So we're going to try to concentrate on most e-pawn setups from black. So this includes the very important e5 move, which is at the start of this DVD. And then we're going to be concentrating on setups where black plays e5, e6 and knight to f6, so Nimzo Indian setups. And finally, we're going to have a look at setups where black plays e6 and d5. So DVD 1, we're going to concentrate on the English with black moving the e-pawn. I struggled a little bit to work out how I was going to define this DVD and what I was including DVD 1 and DVD 2. Well, I think e5 is a very important response, so I've kind of picked an interesting line against the move e5, and maybe a line that black will not be so accustomed to facing. So I think it's going to score you a lot of good results with white. And in DVD 2, I've covered things like the symmetrical English, very popular, black playing King's Indian setups, and black playing other lines like Grunfeld ideas with knight s6 and d5. So a lot of other stuff is covered in DVD 2. But DVD 1, we're going to concentrate on e5, a very traditional way for black to play. We're also going to concentrate on the Nimzo setup, e6 and knight to f6, which is quite popular. And finally, we're going to concentrate on e6 and d5. Have a look at this, which of course a lot of players will play. So what's my background in the English Opening? Well, I started playing chess when I was about 6, and okay, I didn't become good until I was about 12 years old. But all my life up to the age of 18, 19, I played the English Opening, nothing else except for the English. And around the age of 18, 19, I think I became an IM, probably 17, and I was about 2450 rating. So the English really developed me as a chess player, and it got me up to good IM strength, international master strength, even verging on grandmaster strength, only from playing the English. And I play it in every single game, and I think I've got quite a decent understanding of the opening. And I'm going to tell you about the repertoire the suggestions I'm going to give you for white now, and why I'm giving you these suggestions rather than other suggestions. Because when you play the English, there's a lot of different ways you can play the English Opening with whites. I mean, there's so many different formations you can pick. Now, against e5, I'm recommending an interesting way to play, and maybe something which is not really seen in too many textbooks now. So after c4, e5, I'm recommending we start with a move knight to c3. Now, this used to be the old traditional way of playing, and it was kind of superseded in recent years by the move g3. And g3, I know, is recommended by Marin in a great book he wrote on the English Opening, and this will help your knowledge of the opening vastly if you look at this book. Now, the reason I haven't picked the move g3 as my main recommendation is, well, it's twofold. I personally don't like the response knight to c6, something like bishop to g2 or knight to c3, f5. This is, I think, a very good way to meet Marin's English for black. And there was a recent game where Magnus Carlsen played this with black pieces against Peter Svidler and got a winning position very quickly. And this is one problem I have with the white pieces. Now, my philosophy is that as soon as black plays f5, white should be able to meet this move with d4. And clearly white can't do this in this position because black is controlling the square with two pieces, the knight and the pawn. So my repertoire is basically really always based on meeting the move f5 with d4. So trying to simplify things in that manner. So this is why I start with knight to c3. Because then after knight to c6, I'm continuing knight to f3, and if white plays f5 here, my aim is to play d4. And this kind of structure I personally prefer a lot more for white than the structure we can get after g3 and f5 here. And this is just kind of from my own personal play, my personal experience in the English, so people might disagree with that, but I'm going to have to stick with my guns and stick what I know. So this is one reason I'm suggesting the move order knight to c3. Now, the second reason I'm suggesting the line against e5 I'm suggesting, which is basically my main suggestion, knight f3, knight to c6, sorry, and knight to s6, the four knights variation, and here I'm going to be looking at d4. Now, why am I suggesting this move, do you think? Why am I going for this? Well, again, there's two main reasons. Number one, black players playing with the black side, will not be so used to this move, so they could easily get into problems. Number two, white's general formation after this move d4 is very straightforward and it's very easy to play, and you can play it against most of black's options. There are some tactical things that can be quite dangerous, both sides. Black may be only slightly worse, bordering on equality in some of the lines, if he plays absolutely accurate, but this is what happens generally in a lot of openings now, and I don't think this is so bad, because I think in the other main lines, I mean, where black is allowed to play d5, black is absolutely fine as well. And this comes to my next reason why I'm recommending this d4 move. The move order I'm recommending after e5 is knight to c3, knight to c6, or knight to s6. It doesn't make much difference. It can also come about this way. And now I want to always play knight to f3 in these positions. And the other reason is I want to stop black from playing d5 himself. I don't want to allow this move d5 ever. This is a move I always struggle with. So here, black has to defend the e5 pawn, and we go d4 before allowing black to play d5. Now, the reason I don't want to play g3, which is a very traditional line, and a line played by a number of top players, and maybe, you know, perfectly playable line and perfectly okay to play in this manner, is not because of moves like bishop c5 and bishop b4, which I'm not too scared about, but personally, I think black, and I've always scored badly with the white pieces against the move d5. Now, it's personal preference. We won't be looking at this setup in this DVD. I just don't like playing against this with white. I mean, this is a reverse Sicilian. You have to know that, you have to remember this position is a reverse Sicilian. Point being, after you take on d5, black recaptures, we go bishop g2. And the game continues in this manner, normally with knight b6 at some stage. Black puts his bishop here and here, and theoretically speaking, it seems that black is equal with, you know, and it's a very rich position still. But personally, I don't like giving my opponent more space from such an early stage, and black has more space in these positions. So I'm trying to avoid these positions, which I think players on the black side will be more accustomed to knowing as well. So I'm really trying to stop this kind of idea with the repertoire I'm suggesting. So we're doing this by playing after knight to s6 d4, and really we're playing d4 against most things in this e5 line. We're basically playing, our simple repertoire is going to be based on playing knight to c3 first. And then against either knight moves, we're going to play knight to f3. And then against pretty much anything that black plays in this position, we're going to be playing d4. And so this is all you have to remember at the start. We're going to develop both our knights and then play d4. So I think this keeps it quite simple for you to learn, which really helps, which makes it easy to learn this DVD. So if you just remember to go c4, develop both your knights, then go d4, this should be very easy to remember. And then I think this is also good for you, because whatever setup black adopts, I think after this d4 move, the type of positions that you're going to reach as white are going to be very similar. So you'll understand the middle game positions very well, probably better than your opponent. So I think this is another benefit to playing in this way. Yeah, so this is my main idea against 1e5. This is what we're aiming for against 1e5. Develop both our knights, go d4. So I think that's explained now in some rough detail. Now, what about e6? Well, being an English player, I found this move very difficult to face in my years, because I suddenly found that I'm going to have to often transpose to a d4 opening if my opponent plays d5. So I spent a lot of time thinking about options to play here with white. And, you know, I think if you're an English player, you can keep a unique outlook on this position in a number of ways. You don't have to play d4. I think it's a development of a chess player. You know, I'm trying to do the best I can for you guys as a develop. You know, I'm sure you guys are trying to learn from this DVD and get better at chess. And I found this myself. The way I improved, I found that I started to play d4 in this position and learning these structures, and just learning basically how to play against this structure with e6 and d5, with d4 and c4. I found this very useful to me, and I based a repertoire to start with, I'm just showing you telling you how I developed as a player and with how this helped me. I based a repertoire on knight to c3 and taking on d5 quickly, so I didn't have to learn too much theory in this line. So against either knight to f6 or bishop to e7, I simply took on d5 and played these positions. So my theoretical knowledge of this kind of thing was kept, my learning was kept to a minimum. I didn't have to learn too much theory. Now, that's personally how I developed as a chess player. So after c4, the rather annoying move e6, I would play knight to c3 here, and then after d5, I would go d4. And I just learnt how to play these positions by capturing on d5. Now, another problem you're going to get as an English player is what you do if black plays c6 here, if you want to keep it a unique English opening. Well, again, I found personally, in the way I developed as a chess player, I started getting much better results when I started playing normally with d4. And in actual fact, I started playing the exchange Slav with white, and this got me to a very strong standard. I think you can still push in this way. So this is not a ridiculous way to play with white. Now, of course, this is the DVD on the English, so I'm not going to concentrate on these ways of playing. Against both these rather annoying moves, e6 and c6, where black wants to play d5, there's two things you can do. You can either learn to play d4 and play in that way, or you can try to play it in a slightly unique way. Now, a lot of people recommended playing the Reti system against e6 and d5, and there's been a lot of different opening manuals, opening videos on this, and I'm not really going to concentrate too much on this. And now the Reti is where after e6 you either play g3 or knight f3, and then after d5 you play b3. And again, personally, I'm just trying to teach you what I know in the opening. I found that this is a very difficult opening to play for white. It's very subtle. It has a lot of very small points to it, and you have to be a very well-developed player and to understand how to play the Reti. It's not so exciting, and it requires long positional manoeuvres and lots of subtle changes in the position. And I think for most of this DVD is obviously aimed at a range of players, but it's mainly aimed at players who are sort of 1800 around that standard, maybe a little bit less. And I think the Reti system is not a good opening to play, personally, if you're around that standard. I don't think it will help you improve as a chess player. So I wanted to avoid playing in the Reti way. And again, after c4, c6, you can play in the Reti against this as well. You know, you can play knight f3, d5, b3. And this is a Reti way of playing. But again, from my personal experience, I think it's a very slow manoeuvring game, and you have to be a very highly developed player, and it's not a great way to improve as a chess player for an 1800 player to improve to play these kind of systems. So I had a bit of a dilemma in this DVD. Obviously, we're only concentrating on e6. In the next DVD, we'll be looking at c6. But so I had a bit of a dilemma. What to suggest against this move c6? I don't want to suggest a Reti because I don't really believe in it as a good opening to play for a player who's trying to improve. Obviously, I don't want to go for d4 because that's out of the range of this DVD. So I found a very interesting way to play, and my suggestion here is to keep the position quite unique and to play knight to c3 first. Now, we're obviously covering knight to f6 moves in this DVD. Just to point out, my main suggestion here, rather than going into a Nimzo opening, is to play the move e4 here. And this is a move I've had great success with and I know quite very well. So this opening will be featured heavily in this DVD as well. This e4, interesting way to play against the Nimzo. So we'll look at this deeply. But what if black plays d5 here? What does white do? I mean, we don't want to go d4. Well, I found a very interesting setup here where we just play e3. And this is a very unique setup. I think this will take black out of his theory books from a very early stage. And it's quite flexible, and we're going to react against black setups in different ways. Now, it does have a Reti feel to it, but it's different to a Reti, I'd say, because we're not developing our bishop here. We're developing our bishop to b2. So let me just explain some things, the way I want to play this. Against c5, I'm recommending a line with d4, where I think white can claim some small edge. Now, if black plays knight to f6 here, I'm going to recommend to set up with b3, bishop b2, and knight to f3. So it's Reti-like, but it is very different because we're not putting our bishop on g2. And in the Reti, white nearly always puts his bishop on g2. We're going for a different setup with bishop on e2, which I think is a lot simpler to play for white than the Reti, a lot more straightforward, and it works against a lot of different setups, and it's unique. So it's got a lot of advantage, I think, on the Reti. The Reti is a lot more subtle, I think, from this way of playing, and I think this is going to, be a very, very interesting thing. And I know no one else has done much work on this as well, so it's a unique way to play, and this is why I'm suggesting this setup for you, this e3 move. And really, that's what the main bulk of this DVD is. So we're going to spend a lot of time looking at e5 lines, and hopefully, as you know now, my suggestion in these variations is to bring both your knights up and play d4 against everything. So that keeps the lines against e5 quite simple, quite easy for you to learn, which is exactly what I'm aiming for. Against the move e6, I'm recommending you go knight to c3 here, seeing how black develops. Now, if black develops with knight to f6, then I'm basing a repertoire on e4 here. I think a very nice repertoire, so we can avoid the Nimzo Indian, which is an opening black might be well prepared for. So you can trick a lot of players with the black pieces out by playing this e4 move. So I think a very good repertoire, this one. Against d5, we're going to have a look at setups with e3 briefly, and just have a basic understanding of this e3 move. So this is my main bulk of this DVD, and we're going to sort of shortly move into what I expect is the main continuation that black will play, one of the most popular moves, e5, in the next game. But I just wanted to introduce this opening in this first DVD, introduce the way I've structured the DVD, and hopefully that will help you understand my thinking, my thoughts with this DVD. So I hope you enjoyed the opening, and I hope this repertoire brings you lots of interesting and exciting victories in your games. That's all from me, Simon Williams, for now. I'll be, coming with you some heavy theory soon, so stay tuned.